Before modern kitchens relied on gadgets and shortcuts, grandmothers relied on methods that worked every time. They cooked without timers, without measuring cups, and without wasting food. What they knew was earned through years of trial, failure, and necessity. These were not trendy tips or cookbook tricks. They were practical solutions developed when every ingredient mattered and every meal had to succeed. A small habit could prevent a dish from failing. A simple adjustment could stretch food for an entire family. Nothing was done by accident. Most of these techniques disappeared as convenience replaced skill. Yet they were never outdated. They were forgotten. In this video, you will learn 10 genius cooking tricks used by grandmothers in vintage American kitchens. Each one solved a real problem. Each one saved time, effort, or ingredients. And each one still works today, even in modern homes. If you skip these lessons, you miss the quiet wisdom that shaped generations of home cooking. Stay with this video, because by the end, you may realize the most valuable kitchen knowledge was never written down. It was passed from hand to hand, meal by meal. Saving bacon grease. Before vegetable oils filled store shelves, bacon grease was not waste. It was treasure. In many American kitchens, a small tin sat beside the stove, holding the rich drippings from every cooked strip of bacon. Grandmothers never poured it down the drain. They saved it, protected it, and used it with purpose. This habit came from necessity. Meat was expensive, and flavor could not be wasted. Bacon grease added depth to food when spices were limited and money was tight. A single spoonful could transform plain ingredients into a full meal. Grandmothers used bacon grease to fry eggs until the edges turned crisp. They stirred it into green beans, corn, or cabbage to add richness without extra meat. Cast iron skillets were seasoned with it, creating a natural non-stick surface long before modern coatings existed. Even biscuits and cornbread benefited from a small amount mixed into the pan. This trick also solved a practical problem. Bacon grease had a long shelf life when strained and stored properly. It reduced the need to buy cooking fats and stretched food budgets week after week. Nothing was wasted, and every drop had value. Modern kitchens often overlook this method, dismissing it as old-fashioned. Yet it remains one of the most effective ways to add flavor and preserve cookware naturally. When used in moderation, it connects cooking to tradition, resourcefulness, and care. This was not about indulgence. It was about respect for food. Grandmothers understood that good cooking did not begin with expensive ingredients. It began with attention and intention. If this simple habit could improve so many meals, imagine what the next forgotten trick can do. Stay with this video, because the wisdom hidden in these kitchens was built to last, and the best lessons are still ahead. Reviving stale bread. In many vintage kitchens, bread was never thrown away simply because it went stale. Grandmothers knew that time did not ruin bread. Carelessness did. When loaves hardened after a day or two, they saw opportunity, not waste. Bread was expensive enough to respect, and families depended on it. A dry loaf could still serve a purpose if treated correctly. The solution was moisture and heat, applied with intention. Grandmothers lightly sprinkled stale bread with water, wrapped it in cloth, and warmed it slowly in the oven. This gentle process restored softness without turning the bread soggy. When revival was not the goal, transformation was. Hardened bread became toast, crumbs, or cubes. It was grated for coating meats, thickening soups, or stretching meatloaf. Nothing was accidental. Every step had a use. This trick solved two problems at once. It reduced waste and extended meals. A single loaf could last days longer, feeding more people without extra cost. During hard times, this mattered. Throwing food away was not an option. Modern kitchens often treat freshness as a deadline. Once bread stiffens, it is discarded. The older method proves that texture can change, but value does not disappear. Bread only fails when it is ignored. Grandmothers understood food cycles. Fresh bread served one role. Day-old bread served another. Both belonged on the table. This mindset made kitchens efficient and thoughtful. Learning this habit changes how you see ingredients. It teaches patience and creativity instead of replacement. If such a simple adjustment could save entire meals, the next forgotten trick may change how you use your kitchen every day. Keep watching because these lessons were built for survival and they still work now. These small choices shaped kitchens where nothing useful was ever casually wasted. The wooden spoon trick. When pots boiled over on old stovetops, grandmothers did not panic. They did not lower heat immediately or lift the lid in a rush. Instead, they reached for a wooden spoon and laid it gently across the top of the pot. This simple habit prevented disasters. Boiling water, milk, or starchy foods like pasta created foam that climbed upward fast. The wooden spoon broke the bubbles before they spilled. It acted as a barrier, slowing the boil and protecting the stove from mess and waste. This trick came from daily cooking, not theory. Kitchens lacked precise temperature controls, and constant supervision was impossible. Meals had to cook while other tasks continued. The spoon provided insurance. Wood mattered. Metal heated quickly and failed. Plastic melted. Wood stayed cool, absorbed moisture, and disrupted rising bubbles naturally. Grandmothers understood materials without naming science. They trusted what worked. This habit solved more than cleanup. It saved food. Spilled milk meant loss. Overflowing pots wasted time and fuel. During tight years, those losses mattered. Clean stoves and controlled cooking kept households running smoothly. Today, many cooks dismiss this trick as a myth. Yet it still works under the same conditions. Rapid boiling. Starchy liquids. Limited attention. The method has not changed because the problem has not changed. The wooden spoon represented awareness. Cooking was not rushed. It was observed. Small tools prevented big mistakes. This lesson reminds us that knowledge did not come from instruction manuals. It came from repetition and results. If one overlooked spoon could prevent wasted meals, imagine how many other quiet habits shape dependable kitchens. Keep watching, because each forgotten trick reveals how experience solved problems long before modern solutions arrived, and these lessons remain useful today. Testing oil with bread. Before thermometers entered home kitchens, grandmothers still knew exactly when oil was ready. They did not guess. They tested. A small piece of bread was dropped gently into the pan, and the reaction told them everything they needed to know. If the bread sank and sat quietly, the oil was too cold. If it burned instantly, the oil was too hot. But when the bread bubbled steadily and turned golden within seconds, the oil was perfect. That moment meant food would cook evenly, not absorb excess grease, and not scorch on contact. This trick mattered. Frying was common, but oil was precious. Incorrect heat ruined meals and wasted fat. Cold oil made food heavy and soggy. Overheated oil burned the outside while leaving the inside raw. One small test prevented all of that. Bread worked because it reacted honestly. It browned at the same pace as most foods and showed changes clearly. Grandmothers trusted simple ingredients to give reliable answers. No tools were required. Only attention. This habit also saved time. There was no waiting and no resetting. The pan told its story immediately. Busy kitchens depended on such clarity. Modern cooks often rely on guesswork or gadgets. Yet this method still performs with accuracy. Oil behavior has not changed. Heat still follows the same rules. This was not a trick for show. It was a safeguard. A quiet step that protected flavor, texture, and effort. Grandmothers understood that good cooking depended on preparation before food ever touched the pan. Small tests prevented big mistakes. If a single piece of bread could guide an entire meal, the next forgotten habit may reveal even deeper kitchen wisdom. Keep watching, because these methods were built through repetition, and they continue to prove themselves with every use. Letting meat rest. In vintage kitchens, meat was never cut the moment it left the heat. Grandmothers knew that rushing this step ruined the result. After roasting, frying, or baking, Meat was set aside and left undisturbed for several minutes before serving. This pause had a purpose. Heat drove juices toward the center of the meat during cooking. Cutting too soon released them onto the plate, leaving the meat dry and flavorless. Resting allowed those juices to redistribute, keeping every bite moist and satisfying. This habit came from experience, not instruction. Meat was costly, and failure was not tolerated. A roast fed families and guests. It had to be right the first time. Waiting was a small price to pay for success. Grandmothers covered meat loosely, never tightly. Trapping steam softened the surface. Gentle resting protected texture while preserving warmth. Nothing was done carelessly. This trick also created balance in the kitchen. While meat rested, side dishes were finished and tables were set. Time was used wisely. Meals came together smoothly. Many modern cooks skip this step, eager to serve immediately. The result is often disappointing. The method remains valid because the structure of meat has not changed. Heat still behaves the same way. Letting meat rest was not patience for its own sake. It was control. It ensured that effort was rewarded. This lesson teaches restraint. Cooking does not end when heat stops. The final result depends on what happens next. If waiting a few minutes could transform an entire dish, the next forgotten trick may change how you approach every meal. Stay with the video, because these quiet decisions shaped dependable kitchens for generations. Peeling tomatoes with ease. In vintage kitchens, peeling tomatoes was a task that required patience, yet grandmothers made it effortless. They did not struggle with knives or waste precious fruit. Instead, they relied on a simple method: scoring, boiling, and shocking. First, a small X was cut on the bottom of each tomato. Then the tomatoes were placed briefly in boiling water, just enough to loosen the skin. Immediately afterward, they were plunged into ice water. The heat expanded the skin, and the cold contracted it, causing it to slip away easily. No peeling by hand or knife scraping was necessary. This technique saved time, preserved the flesh, and reduced waste. Every part of the tomato remained usable. Grandmothers often had dozens of tomatoes to process at once, especially during canning season. Efficiency was essential. Beyond convenience, this trick ensured consistency. Sauces, soups, and stews benefited from smooth tomato flesh without blemishes or tough skin. Even small meals felt carefully prepared. Modern kitchens often overlook this method, relying on machines or pre-peeled canned tomatoes. Yet the principle remains the same: simple physics plus a little patience equals perfect results. Grandmothers also understood that timing mattered. Too long in boiling water softened the fruit. Too short, and the skin resisted. Attention, not guesswork, controlled the outcome. This habit reflects a broader kitchen philosophy. Preparation and technique matter as much as ingredients. Skill transformed ordinary fruit into reliable, delicious results. If a brief dip in boiling water could save hours of effort and improve a meal, imagine the impact of the remaining tricks. Keep watching, because each forgotten technique teaches a small but powerful lesson about care, resourcefulness, and timeless kitchen wisdom. Fluffing mashed potatoes with cold butter. In vintage kitchens, mashed potatoes were never treated as ordinary. Grandmothers knew that texture could make or break a meal, and they relied on a simple yet powerful trick: cold butter. After boiling and mashing potatoes, a few slices of cold butter were added last, just before serving. The contrast in temperature created air pockets as the butter melted, producing light, fluffy, and creamy potatoes without extra effort. No mixers, no heavy cream, just understanding how ingredients interacted. This habit solved several problems. It added richness without excess fat, improved texture instantly, and transformed a basic side into a centerpiece. Families noticed the difference, even if the method was invisible. Every bite felt smoother, lighter, and more comforting. Grandmothers also timed this carefully. Butter was never added too early, which could make potatoes greasy, or too late, which would reduce melting effectiveness. It was a delicate balance learned from repetition and observation. Modern cooks often rely on machines or pre-made mixes, losing the subtle control this technique provided. The principle remains unchanged. The combination of temperature, timing, and a simple ingredient can elevate a basic dish. This trick reflects a broader lesson. Small details matter in cooking. Attention to texture, temperature, and sequence can create results far beyond what ingredients alone achieve. If a few cold slices of butter could completely transform mashed potatoes, the next forgotten trick may revolutionize how you approach even the simplest recipes. Keep watching, because these timeless habits reveal the quiet genius of kitchens long before modern conveniences existed. Using salt to brighten vegetables. In vintage kitchens, vegetables were more than a side dish. They were a statement of care. Grandmothers knew that proper seasoning could transform ordinary vegetables into memorable meals. One simple yet powerful trick was using salt strategically to enhance flavor and color. Before cooking, vegetables were often soaked or sprinkled lightly with salt. This drew out excess moisture from leafy greens, improving texture and reducing bitterness. For root vegetables, a pinch of salt during boiling helped retain natural sweetness and deepen the flavor without overpowering the dish. This technique solved multiple problems. It made even the most modest vegetables taste vibrant, ensured consistency across meals, and minimized waste by rescuing imperfect produce. Families ate more of what was served, stretching ingredients further. Grandmothers understood balance. Too much salt could ruin a dish, too little left it bland. They relied on careful observation and experience, tasting as they went rather than following rigid measurements. Their instinct guided seasoning, making each plate both flavorful and nuanced. Modern kitchens often overlook this method, preferring pre-seasoned or processed vegetables. Yet the principle remains the same. Simple adjustments can reveal the full potential of fresh ingredients. This trick also reflected a larger philosophy. Cooking was not just about filling the stomach but creating satisfaction and pride in every bite. A small pinch of salt could elevate a meal, transforming humble vegetables into a centerpiece of flavor. If a tiny adjustment could unlock a world of taste in ordinary produce, imagine what other forgotten techniques could do in your kitchen. Keep watching, because the next trick will show how grandmothers turned even simple meals into unforgettable experiences. Keeping herbs fresh longer. In vintage kitchens, fresh herbs were precious. They added flavor, color, and aroma to meals, yet they spoiled quickly. Grandmothers discovered simple methods to extend their life without refrigeration technology or plastic wraps. One common trick was storing herbs in a small jar of water, much like a bouquet of flowers, then covering the tops loosely with a paper towel. This kept stems hydrated while allowing air to circulate, preventing mold. Herbs like parsley, cilantro, and basil stayed vibrant for days instead of wilting in hours. Another approach involved wrapping herbs in a damp cloth before placing them in a cool corner or pantry. The moisture kept leaves from drying out, while careful ventilation prevented rot. This method made herbs last longer without altering their flavor. These habits solved practical problems. Fresh herbs enhanced meals, but they were often expensive or limited to seasonal availability. Extending freshness meant every meal could benefit from their taste, and nothing was wasted. Grandmothers also used small portions at a time. They trimmed leaves only as needed, preserving the remainder. This reflected a broader kitchen philosophy: patience, respect for ingredients, and careful management of resources. Modern kitchens often rely on prepackaged herbs or plastic containers, which can lead to flavor loss and waste. Yet the old methods were simple, effective, and sustainable. They required only observation, attention, and a few household items. This trick reminds us that cooking was not just about the act itself, but about preparation, timing, and respect for ingredients. Keeping herbs fresh was a quiet skill that elevated meals and reduced waste. If a small jar of water could maintain flavor for days, The final trick may reveal how grandmothers preserved entire kitchens through clever, practical techniques. Stay with the video, because the wisdom of these kitchens continues to offer lessons for every modern cook. Reheating leftovers without losing flavor. In vintage kitchens, leftovers were never discarded. Every meal mattered, and wasting food was not an option. Grandmothers discovered ways to reheat food so that it tasted fresh, preserved texture, and retained nutrition. One key method was gentle heat. Instead of blasting leftovers in high temperatures, they reheated on low heat or in a simmering water bath. Sauces were stirred carefully, meats were covered to retain moisture, and delicate dishes were warmed gradually. This approach prevented drying, overcooking, or flavor loss. Another trick involved adding small adjustments during reheating. A splash of stock, a pat of butter, or a sprinkle of seasoning restored depth that had mellowed in storage. Mashed vegetables were fluffed, soups were whisked, and casseroles were turned occasionally. Nothing was treated carelessly. These habits solved practical problems. Refrigeration and storage were limited, and meals often had to last more than one day. Proper reheating ensured that food remained appetizing, nourishing, and satisfying even hours after it was first cooked. Modern kitchens often rely on microwaves or high heat, which can destroy texture and flavor. Grandmothers relied on observation, patience, and subtle adjustments, proving that care mattered more than speed. This trick reflects a larger philosophy. Cooking was a continuous process. Preparation, storage, and reheating were all part of the meal, not separate chores. Attention to each step made the difference between ordinary food and memorable meals. If careful reheating could preserve entire dinners, it is clear that every trick in these kitchens had purpose, efficiency, and wisdom behind it. These 10 forgotten habits show that grandmothers did not just cook. They solved problems, respected ingredients, and transformed simple meals into lasting experiences.